Today's session will be led by Steve Gregory, who is a Principal Solution Consultant here at SAP SuccessFactors. Steve, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So welcome, everyone. I've got a few slides that I'm going to walk us through around the People Analytics and SAP strategy. But before we start there, I thought it might be helpful to maybe get an understanding of kind of where everyone is in relation to analytics, specifically around your HR program. So, what we would consider People Analytics. So if you wouldn't mind taking a second to respond to the poll that's in front of you. We'll have the results up in a few minutes here, but I'll give you a second to respond there. Essentially, what we're asking is, what are your biggest challenges around your HR analytics? So where do you see, where are you currently challenged in creating meaningful metrics, meaningful analytics around your people and your people processes? And while you're thinking that through, I will kind of push ahead to a legal disclaimer here, because we are going to be discussing some things that are forward-looking in relation to the SAP SuccessFactors products. So I have to put up our legal disclaimer here, and basically, in essence, we will be talking about some futures. And if you are making buying decisions, you should base your decisions on what's currently available in the product in regards to current features and functions in the application. The things that I will be talking about are coming out in the relatively near term, but always keep that in mind in terms of purchasing decisions you might be making. So in relation to kind of what's top of mind in most organizations, what's top of mind for CEOs specifically, we tend to see these areas that most CEOs are concerned with, right? It's obviously keeping the stockholders or the company's shareholders happy about the business growth and the long-term viability of the company overall. Most organizations are looking for ways to innovate, ways to kind of change their business to innovate or be passed by their competitors quickly. So they want to produce a culture of innovation. They want to have a meaningful experience for their customers, and in turn, for their employees as well. The old axiom that you treat your employees, greatly, that'll be passed on to your customers, right? And then certainly there's, a lot of times there's a focus on reduced cost while kind of boosting productivity, right? So, what are the two biggest factors, obviously, in this are people and technology. They're the biggest drivers of what that is. So let's take a quick look at our poll results here. And it looks like kind of the two toughest answers are data being stored in different systems and formats. So I would imagine the challenge there is, bringing kind of data together in any kind of meaningful measurement or analysis, as well as the lack of analytic skills in the HR department. So they're the two highest drivers. Those are things that we can definitely address in the tools and capabilities I'm going to be showing you as well. And that is very common across organizations that we work with, right? Having data in very siloed, disparate systems is by far the largest challenge that we see in a lot of organizations, right? How do we bring together data that we need to find out if we're effective or not, right? It's one thing to measure how many people have gone through a particular learning course, but is that course effective? Is there any kind of uplift on sales revenue or other things because of that? So I'm going to spend a few minutes on just a couple slides here, and then we'll quickly get into a demo. In relation to kind of the CHRO, in terms of what they're doing, is oops, that slide duplicated. Sorry about that. As far as the CHRO is concerned, right? The the CHRO is obviously supporting, and responsible for the people initiatives in the organization. And, these are the challenges that we see here, not unlike what we saw in our poll, right? So data being all over the place, an incomplete picture of what's happening. Long delays in getting kind of any meaningful analysis out of these things, right? So any kind of quick turnaround is non-existent in a lot of organizations. Oftentimes there's human bias that's being placed on kind of the results that are there, right? So people are putting their inherent biases maybe to support a program or something that they're responsible for in those. Out of all that, it's unclear about what we do with this data. Once we analyze it and see that there's a trend or something happening, what's the actions, or what do we do to take action on those types of things? And then, there's other types of analysis that are happening really at that CHR level, right? So they're trying to build a people-centric business model in terms of things that are happening. Again, focusing on the experience and the engagement of employees, right? Most CHROs want their organization to become a magnet for talent. They want to be able to attract the best and brightest out there. They want to be able to create that ideal employee experience, be able to manage an agile workforce. So as new innovations and new technologies and new paradigms in business appear, how do we quickly kind of turn and be agile in that regard? And then, there's a need to kind of focus or forecast on the future skills needed to run an organization. What we've seen in some recent studies is that this is based on a Gartner study, and I think it's a PwC study in there as well. I'm having trouble seeing that text. But, there's a lot of loss that's happening across an organization due to that poor data quality, right? And because of that, 60% of the organizations that that run into these issues don't trust the numbers that they have. So if we have no faith in the metrics and analytics that we're producing, it becomes obviously a lot more difficult to take any kind of action on those things. So this is where SAP and specifically SAP SuccessFactors, are focusing our attention, right? You may have heard the term intelligent enterprise. It's a suite of capabilities across the entire SAP landscape to help your business applications become more intelligent, be able to gain and glean meaningful insight out of what your organization's doing. At the heart of that intelligent enterprise is a product referred to as the SAP Analytics Cloud. The SAP Analytics Cloud is really the reporting and analytics engine that is that will run across the entire SAP product footprint. So we're going to see elements of the SAP Analytics Cloud in the SuccessFactors tool in a second here, but this is really the heart of the intelligent enterprise from an SAP perspective. And what this does is gives you a single modern user interface for decision making, really for every role in your organization. So whether you are a line level manager in your organization, whether you're a HR business partner, or whether that HR business partner is producing dashboards and results for their business constituents or for board level reporting, right? This single tool can be utilized to satisfy all those things, as well as things like standard reporting and compliance reporting and other types of things, right? So it is a single tool that will be common across the SAP landscape that gives you all this insight and capability across the application. And it is the ability to take data and be able to analyze it and take action then on that data, right? So to be able to blend data from multiple disparate systems, be able to very quickly analyze data to get to the kind of why things are happening. So less of the answering the what questions, like what's going on right now in our organization, but more of the why. Why are people leaving our organization? Why are we losing a lot of high-performing female employees in our structure? Right? And then being able to take action on those things. And how this kind of manifests itself in SuccessFactors is in kind of three pillars here. So the Analytics Cloud is utilized for embedded reporting. So think of embedded reporting as your standard reporting and dashboards that maybe a line level manager might have, or an HR business partner might need to report to, the government, that you're doing, governments that you're doing business in, countries where you have a presence, right? So compliance-related reporting in the U.S., it's OFCCP compliance and EOC and VETS 4212. Those standard reports and things that make up your compliance-related types of reporting. And then it might be dashboards that are produced for line-level managers. What's the status of our talent initiatives? What's the status of our performance appraisals? Those types of things. The middle layer is what we refer to as extended analytics. It's a rich set of metrics that helps make sense of the data and get to those why things are happening questions, right? So beyond what's going on in our organization now to why. Why? What are the reasons? What are the root causes for the things that we're experiencing in our organization? And it's built on a rich set of metrics that I'll walk us through. And that's where we're really going to focus our time on the extended analytics, the ability to make sense of the data and be able to utilize this at a CHR level or even at a board level to understand, the impact on the business. And kind of the last pillar then is the ability to utilize those rich metrics and predictive capabilities to get to things like planning initiatives. So whether that's operational planning over the next 12 to 18 months across our organization, what's our hiring plans? How does that fit into our budget capabilities? What are the skills and competencies that we need, in the organization? So there's an operational element as well as a strategic planning element. So where does our organization or our company expect to be in the next 5 years? What are the key roles that are going to get us there? And, what has our trend been from a look-back perspective? What has our trend been for retiring workforce and, higher rates and attrition and other types of things, right? To then look forward and be predictive now to say, and where do we expect to be in 5 years? And then based on, our demand and our supply, where do we anticipate gaps in the next 3, 5, 7 years in our organization based on the plans of the company, right? So it's marrying those strategic workforce plans to the strategic initiatives of your overall organization, marrying the people implications to that. So those three pillars are, available, from the SuccessFactors application. We're going to focus kind of on that extended pillar in the middle there. And then, what we've seen out of this and the outcome of all of this is organizations that embrace these types of analytics, are more likely to focus on business outcomes as opposed to just kind of what's happening, right? What are the, what are the things that we're seeing? We're seeing greater return on stock and the financial viability of the organization based on these things. Organizations that utilize analytics are twice as effective at recruiting, right? Because we can start to analyze and see where our best recruiting sources are coming from and focus our attention on attracting and retaining the best talent going forward, right? And twice as likely to improve, leadership pipeline. So again, attracting the best people for future managerial and, leadership positions within the organization. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there and go ahead and share my screen here. So let me flip over to my screen share and we'll get into the People Analytics here. And this will take 1 second here to come up. And you should now be seeing my desktop here with the People Analytics dashboard. This is the type of dashboard that could be delivered to senior leaders in the organization. Might be something a CHRO might see, or could be even used to deliver kind of what's happening with our workforce in a what we refer to as a digital boardroom. So where your board members are coming together and analyzing the business from a profitability perspective, sales and competitive information and other types of things, and then looking at our people implications to support all that. So we're looking at a series of people metrics. This would be the 6 or 8 kind of key metrics that a CHRO might want to focus on. These are metrics that are built on really 30 years of human capital experience that we have in the marketplace. So these are, in many ways, our best practices. These are predefined metrics that we have. We have over 2,000 of these. Now, most organizations focus on a handful of those, nowhere near the 2,000 that we deliver. But these metrics can focus on different areas of your business. So they could be overall kind of workforce composition types of metrics around things like hire rates and retention rates and maybe overall demographic information about your organization. But then they can also focus on specific areas of your people initiatives, so things like recruiting and succession and learning and talent, right? So all those areas, and you're going to see that we can bring data across a variety of disciplines as well as even external data to make sense and get some valuable insight into what's happening here. So from a CHRO perspective, I'm looking at a dashboard here that has things like the average span of control. So this would be, looking at the span of control across managers. And that span of control actually is going down over time, as you can see here, right? So in 2019, we're looking at a lower span of control that we have in relation to that organization, right? And you can see up in the upper right here, we can even filter on, drill into specific org units or locations if it's warranted. We might look at something like an average return on that human investment, right? This is a calculation or a metric that we provide. You can see there's a target line here as a fixed reference that we're under here, right? So we've got some work to do in terms of get there. That particular metric might have a series of inputs that calculate that, and we have very clear definitions on how all these things are created that could be linked out here as well. We've got things like return on learning, right? This is the utopia of learning. How do I know what learning programs that I have that are effective, right? So we've got ways that we can measure and isolate certain variables in that. Our quality of hire index, right? The ability to understand what we're looking like. This is climbing, which is a good thing. We're still under our target, but we're certainly headed in the right direction. And then we might have, initiatives around women in leadership, right? What's that look like over time? What's the change? What's our return on our corporate wellness, right? If you have wellness and health and wellness types of initiatives internally, there's a way we can measure those types of things to understand kind of how we're doing as an organization. So this is an example of something that might be delivered to a CHRO. Beyond this, there are a variety of other things that we can drill into. So we may want to understand from a workforce composition perspective what our organization looks like. Where are people located? So up top here, you'll see a map that's going to come up. It's kind of a heat index that shows, based on our headcount, where our most headcount are. We can look at this by, FTEs or average span of control across the organization. Down the bottom here, you also see kind of a breakdown or a heat map of what this looks like, by geography. And, obviously the color denotes kind of the intensity of that, that particular metric here in terms of number of employees, right? We can very quickly see kind of what our workforce trends and things are looking like here, right? We can also drill in and understand more things like, the business impact, right? So here now you're looking at where we're driving and starting to understand some of the financial aspects of things. So we're obviously looking at our return on human capital investment, but what's our operating FTE, operating profit per FTE, that is. So we're taking a financial metric and correlating that to, employee data. We're looking at expenses across employees, right? We're looking at our revenue and other types of things, right? This data obviously isn't housed within SuccessFactors. It's coming from some financial system or from an SAP financial, like an S/4HANA, type of system that's driving this, right? Then you see this graph above here where we're looking at our return. Out to the right, I'll show you that, this is where we're starting to get predictive now, right? We're starting to understand from a predictive standpoint, where we're headed with that. And, we've got some level of confidence placed around that from a predictor standpoint. So within the Analytics Cloud, there is the ability to forecast data where we can understand kind of what our forecasts are and, understand the quality of that forecast based on how we've looked at the past trends, right? So we can utilize different methods in forecasting to understand that. So you see some of the methods that we utilize. This is part and parcel of the Analytics Cloud series, to be able to utilize different types of forecasting algorithms to understand kind of what the quality of that forecast is going forward, and how we can utilize that to then understand where we're headed as a particular organization here, right? And you'll see this in a variety of areas. You'll see this also in things like recruiting, right? So if we look at our recruiting indexes, I showed how we were looking at things like a quality of hire. Well, again, we can be predictive about that. Where are we heading with that quality of hire, and what's the strength of that forecast going forward? What are the things that are feeding into that, right? So we can look at across the organization and start to understand, and this might be bringing in elements of performance or talent attributes to understand what that quality hire is, right? So based on the hiring source and the individuals that we have, what is the quality of the individuals that we're bringing on, a year from now? How are they performing? What is their potential in the organization, right? Being able to utilize that detail. We have the same thing around learning and growth, right? So how are we headed, from our training hours and our expense across training, right? Then being able to potentially break this down by and look at things like, average training hours by performance rating, let's say, right? We might want to analyze, is there a correlation with the number of hours people are spending in learning and development and performance and talent attributes related to that. And then ultimately what we can get to is to understand kind of where we're heading from a flight risk perspective. So here's where we can start to take action. So if we start to look at things like talent attributes and understand what influences our flight risk across our organization. You're going to hear a lot about this from a experience perspective. If you're familiar with the recent Qualtrics acquisition, we have the ability to bring this operational type of data together with the experience or sentiment data that's being measured by Qualtrics and get to understand, what are the true influencers of our flight risk? What are the characteristics that are making that up? Where might we be at risk? And then, from a predictive standpoint, start to understand who's likely to leave and why. And we can link right back to things like employee profiles to understand now what we can do about, what's the characteristics of these individuals? What have their jobs been? What have their performance over time been? What types of things do we need to do now to retain them, right? And what's the overall probability that they might leave the organization? Again, this is being predictive in nature, right? So it's taking that rich data that's being mined in the organization and being able to make sense of that data and being able to ultimately take action on that information.